Welcome back to the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry small group content series. My name is Kory LaCroix. I'm on staff here at Our Lady of Grace. I mostly work with our young professionals and our married couples, and it is a great privilege to be with you today. Just a couple days ago, I was with a friend, and he was telling me about this new word he heard, rotting. And I was like, that's weird. I was like, what's that? And he said it's the moment that teenagers will ask for or refer to get like a break. And I was like, well, why is it rotting? And he said, because they'll just like go find a place on a couch or in their room and just scroll, just rot. I was like, oh, and I said, that's such a good thing that they know that that's what's happening. They're rotting. And then he said, no, like it's the opposite. They actually think it's good for them, like they need it. Like that feeling that you have when you're just mindlessly scrolling and you're escaping from reality. The teens think it's good. Americans in 2015 spent $6.78 billion on Netflix. And just this last year, Netflix spent $16.2 billion on new content, so 3 times that amount. In 2025, 2015, we spent $13 billion on video games. And just last year, we spent nearly $60 billion on video games, just distracting ourselves, escaping, or as the teens say, rotting. C.S. Lewis, in his book, The Screwtape Letters, which is this dialogue between like a senior demon and like a lesser demon. He's like teaching him how to be a good demon. He wrote this, and it's chilling. You'll know you've done a good job when the time comes when you'll no longer need a good book to keep him from his prayers or his sleep, but merely a column of advertisements in yesterday's paper will do the trick. You can make him do nothing at all for long periods of time. He'll spend most of his life neither doing what he wants, nor even what he likes, but he'll drift. Just drift. For many of us, we heard last week, we struggle with this thing called hurried sickness, where the pace of our lives is constantly at us, right? One thing after another, the next thing. And for all of us, our lives are full of many good things. And we heard also that Jesus has something to say about this. And it's not a list of things to do, but a way of life to live. And it's exactly this that he offered. Jesus offered a new way of living. And the way that he brought about this new way of living was by calling 12 disciples or learners. And they lived with him, they followed him, they saw what he did, they saw what he ate. They learned the practices of this rabbi, Jesus. And for us today at this moment, in this culture of rotting, Jesus also offers us a way, an antidote to this hurried sickness. So when Jesus says, come follow me, he's not merely saying, come think the things that I think or believe the right things. But he says, let me show you a new way of living. A few years ago, I was visiting my cousin in North Dakota. At the time, he was a prison warden at one of the state prisons, and he was giving us a tour of their new facility. As we made our way through a prison, which maybe for some of you is a surprise I'd never been into before, he eventually brought us to this place of solitary confinement. And honestly, it was one of the most chilling experiences I've had on earth, as he described kind of what life was like and what they called the hole or the pit. The men that were in solitary confinement were in individual rooms for 23 hours a day. By law, they were allowed 1 hour a day of recreation, which consisted either one of two things. Either they could be brought to a cell outside, where they could be alone for an hour, sometimes given a ball, or there's a little slit in the roof of their room that would open so that they could get fresh air. When I was in that space, I just remember feeling like a lot of heaviness and darkness, sadness, despair. This is what we think as a society is one of our cruelest forms of punishment. It was a chilling place. Peter Kreeft, in one of his books, said this. He said, "We are so afraid of silence and solitude, which are necessary for private prayer, that we give it to our most desperate criminals as the most horrible torture our mind can conceive. What's interesting is that Jesus actually showed us that silence and solitude was one of the necessary things of being his disciple. In fact, after Jesus was baptized, Mark Comer in his book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, points out that the first thing that Jesus did was to go into the desert. Mark Comer, he highlights some of the different definitions for the desert, and I think they're beautiful. So it can also be thought of as a deserted place, a desolate place, a solitary place, a lonely place, a quiet place, or the wilderness. You see, for Jesus, the quiet, the solitude, wasn't a place of despair, but it was a place of victory. It was a place where he could reconnect and be in communion with the Father. It was a place of power. This is the example that Jesus offered us. And in fact, after the baptism and after going into the desert, he does this time and time again. And it seems like the more intense things get for Jesus throughout Scripture, the more we find Jesus going to the quiet place. I remember first being a young father and getting home late at night after the kids had gone to bed. And even though it would drive my wife crazy, I would often go into their room and wake them up. Not like loud and obnoxiously, but just like, Ames or Cecilia, and I can like rub them awake just to like get their eyes to open for a second. For me, it was just this like deep desire I had to connect with them, especially on those days that we didn't have time together. Maybe if you're a parent, you can relate to that. I often will go back to that moment in prayer, especially in those seasons where prayer is difficult, mindful that this is how the Father sees me, how the Father desires my attention. Just waiting for the moment where maybe I'll open my eyes a little bit to catch his gaze. This is why we need the silence and the solitude. This is why we need also to step back from all those things that make promises that they can't keep. To step back from the drifting on the Netflix or the rotting on the phone. Or maybe, if you're like me, just the endless to-do that is my schedule. In fact, I think this is one of the easiest lies that we can believe as Catholics and Christians in our spiritual lives. That I have to get my life in order before I can be with God. Once I complete my to-do list, once I do my work for the day, once I do that thing that will help improve my marriage, then I can invest in my relationship with God. Then I can make time for prayer. But the truth is, it's exactly the opposite, right? We go to prayer first to order what's disordered within our hearts. We go to prayer first to order what's disordered in our hearts. We sometimes can think that prayer minimizes our time, right? If I pray, then I have less time to do other things. But it's exactly the opposite, right? Prayer actually magnifies our time. When we're living from a place of communion with the Father, when we're living, your will be done, everything else changes. A few years ago, I was on a retreat. It was a men's silent retreat. And literally on my way to the retreat, I was looking at the schedule and asking myself, when can I take my first nap? I was just totally fried. I felt like I had nothing left in the tank and was like, honestly, I really need this retreat. I need this silence. And as we got to the retreat and the retreat director gave us like a rundown of the schedule, he said that we had come to the retreat not to rest, but to work. That the real work is going to be resting in God rather than resting on our terms. And when he first said it, I was so frustrated. I was like, I need my nap. I will not be able to get anything out of this retreat until I get my nap. And it just took this moment of like deep faith to be like, okay, no, like he's right. So like after the first talk, we all went into the chapel for a holy hour. That's how we started the retreat. And I just like said this like very vulnerable prayer to Jesus. I said, I can't do this. And then he didn't say this audibly, but it was just like this acknowledgement. of a question, and he just impressed upon my heart, and it was, do you believe that I'm the one that can bring you rest? And my honest answer back was kind of, it's like, yeah, I do believe that you can do that, but I also know that like you made me with a body that needs to sleep, right? So then I said, I'm struggling here, God. And as I was with him in that hour, my physical tiredness did not lessen, but the disorder and the worry and the anxiety and the control that was within my heart was overcome by a peace to be with my Father here in this moment on this retreat. The thing is, like, we all know that we need this silence and solitude. It's wired into our being. When we don't have it, things get a little crazy. I mean, we feel distant from God. We feel distant maybe from our families, our spouses, our children. We feel a current, maybe an undercurrent of anxiety, of pressure, maybe worry. We feel exhausted. We feel like, I just want to escape, like just give me a break for a moment. We look to serve less. How can I do less? We're more easily tempted. We're more irritable and ornery. So the thing about silence is, does it give us rest and recreation? Yes, absolutely. But one of the beautiful things about silence is it both reveals ourselves to us. God reveals ourselves to us. Like, what are we really struggling with? What are we really worried about? What do we really need? But it's also the place where God reveals himself to us. It's the practice of the presence of God where we come face to face with the place that he loves us. We don't often think of prayer like that, right? Prayer as a place of love, where I'm caught in the gaze of love of God, where he loves me. Like, I'm putting myself in this situation today, Lord, in prayer to be loved by you. Interior silence allows us to enter into his presence. The exterior silence helps us to enter into the interior silence. What's wild about silence and solitude is it magnifies whatever is in our hearts. It's like they're exposed, right? And what's so beautiful about that is that it's at that moment, once they're magnified, once they're exposed, that we can then offer them to God to be healed. And I think that's, honestly, that's why many of us turn to those lesser creatures like video games and Netflix, or I don't know, what else is there? Pinterest and shopping, right? If I'm distracted with those things, I don't have to face. I don't have to face the things that are really troubling me. But it's actually at that place where we can bring them to Jesus to be healed. As we wrap up our time today, I want to just leave you with kind of two things to ponder and then a plan of action. The first is an invitation. It's a strong invitation or word from Henry Nouwen. He said, without solitude, it's virtually impossible to have a spiritual life. We do not take the spiritual life seriously if we do not set aside some time to be with God and listen. So just propose that, not in like condemnation or even conviction, but just like an invitation and possibility. Do you want to take this seriously? To say to Jesus, like, no, I want to be serious about this. Maybe for the first time in my life, to be really serious about my relationship with you in prayer. Knowing that my relationship with you isn't possible without prayer. And then finally, a word from St. John Paul II. He said, only in silence do we succeed in hearing the voice of God, which really makes us free. Silence is the place of freedom. It's the place of victory. Let's claim that today.